Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. If you're tuning in today, you're probably someone who really values focused learning, and we've got a fantastic topic. Today, we're going to take a really close look at a profoundly deep-rooted issue that might actually be running the show in your daily life. I want to step into a bit of a coaching role with you right now because we're exploring the weight of unsaid things, pulling from the powerful insights of Abhisshek Om Chakravarty. So let's dive right in and look at what your silence is quietly doing to you, and absolutely crucially, how we're going to help you find your voice again.
Let me ask you something. Have you ever woken up just completely drained, even after a perfectly solid 8 hours of sleep? You know the feeling. You didn't run a marathon yesterday, you didn't pull a double shift, yet you're carrying around this heavy pressure. Maybe you feel it sitting right there between your throat and your chest. Well, here's the real game changer. This kind of inexplicable exhaustion, it isn't a physical weakness, not at all. It's actually an emotional cost. It is literally the accumulated weight of every single time you swallowed a disagreement, smiled your way through an unfair meeting, or said, "Oh, it's fine," when honestly, it absolutely was not fine.
All right, let's get into Section 1, the physical cost of silence. Basically, your body is keeping score.
We kind of tend to think keeping our mouths shut is the safe, strategic play, right? But we're actually making a silent bargain. We're trading our internal peace just for a bit of external comfort. And that brings us to the core difference between physical tiredness and emotional fatigue. See, physical tiredness is pretty straightforward. You work hard, your body needs to recover, and sleep fixes it. Done. Emotional fatigue, however, that is a continuous, relentless energy cost. The unspoken word doesn't just magically dissolve into thin air. Your mind and your nervous system actually store that compressed energy. Your whole system is designed for survival, and it treats unresolved conflicts, like a really uncomfortable truth you're just sitting on, as a literal danger. It puts your body on this sustained, low-level alert. You simply can't truly rest while your system believes it's under threat. You aren't tired from your work, you are tired of hiding.
It's honestly fascinating how the body speaks when the voice can't. By the time we even realize we're emotionally suppressed, our bodies have usually been screaming at us for years. Think about it: a stiff neck, chronic jaw tightness, that inexplicable chest heaviness. Did you know your nervous system uses massive amounts of physical, metabolic energy just to actively suppress a single thought? Crazy, right? These aren't just random ailments. They are receipts for unsaid truths. You know, ancient Vedic texts actually call the throat the purification center, and it's built for flow. When you chronically block it, that tension literally radiates downward, right into your neck, your shoulders, your chest, and your belly.
So, what do we actually do with this? Well, we need to completely reframe how we view this exhaustion. You need to start treating your chronic fatigue as actionable information. It is not a sign of failure. It's a clear, directional signal from your nervous system, and it's desperately trying to make visible what you've been trying so hard to keep invisible. It's telling you that something currently stuck just needs to move.
Moving on to Section 2, the architecture of resentment, or the invisible cost of keeping the peace.
Look, nobody just wakes up and decides to cultivate bitterness, but your mind secretly collects data on every little slight. Someone crosses a boundary, and because you don't say anything, your mind quietly records, "They don't respect me." And boom, unspoken resentment starts to build. Silence doesn't just harm you internally, it builds these massive invisible walls between you and the people you care about. You begin compiling this invisible scorebook, a literal prosecution file against a partner or a coworker who honestly doesn't even know they're on trial. You're convicting them in a court they didn't even know existed.
And that leads us straight into what's known as the mind-reading trap. We just expect people to naturally intuit our unstated boundaries and correctly interpret our silences, and when they fail, we hold them in contempt. But think about it, how can anyone respect a boundary that was never actually drawn? Blaming others for not seeing what we need is often just a defense mechanism. We use it to avoid the vulnerability and, frankly, the discomfort of clear, honest communication.
Now, this definitely doesn't just happen at home. Consider the profound cost of all this silence at work. People swallow their perspectives in meetings just to keep the peace. Managers withhold direct feedback. And over time, this snowballs into completely disengaged team cultures and sudden, unexplained resignations. The phrase, "keeping it professional," essentially becomes this toxic little code for keeping it hidden. The architecture of resentment ultimately builds an architecture of broken connection right there in our professional environments too.
There's a realization here that just hits incredibly hard. Resentment is love that was never allowed to speak. Wow. It is genuine care that turned bitter simply because of the silence that was originally meant to protect the relationship. Think about that. By trying to keep the peace, you might actually be destroying the very connection you're trying so hard to save.
All right, Section 3, from spectator to participant. Let's talk about rebuilding your inner compass.
When you systematically squash your own voice to manage your relationships, something far more dangerous happens. You eventually start hiding your true self from yourself. You run the very real risk of entering what's called spectator mode. Have you ever had this profoundly weird, alienating feeling where you catch yourself watching your own life from a slight distance? Like you're going through all the motions, performing all the roles, but you just feel entirely empty inside? Your true self hasn't disappeared, okay? It just went underground because it learned that the surface wasn't a safe place to be. You learn to edit your feelings before they even became thoughts, and your self-trust just begins to erode entirely.
So, what does this actually look like? Here are the practical signs that you are avoiding your interior life. First, you organize absolutely everything around external expectations, what you think you are supposed to do. Second, you routinely doubt your own feelings. You catch yourself asking, am I overreacting, before you even allow yourself to actually feel the emotion. And crucially, you use constant busyness. Busyness is literally just the noise we make so we don't have to confront the massive gap between the life we are living right now and the authentic life that would be ours if we just trusted our own voice.
Which brings us to Section 4, identifying your suppressed feelings. This is the absolute prerequisite for speaking up. So how do we move from being a spectator back to being an active participant in our own lives? Breaking the silence doesn't start with some big dramatic confrontation. It actually starts in private with a really focused journaling exercise. You have to let your interior self know that the surface is finally ready to receive it again. Here's what you do. Sit quietly, grab a notebook, write down exactly what you actually feel. And listen to me, do not soften it. Do not edit the words for some imaginary audience. Seeing it right there in your own handwriting makes it real. It bypasses your mind's bad habit of just dismissing things that haven't been externalized. Because honestly, you cannot speak a truth out to the world that you haven't first permitted yourself to know.
Next up, Section 5, practicing low-stakes honesty. It's all about building the muscle.
You wouldn't just jump off the couch and run a marathon on your first day of training, right? So please, don't start with the hardest conversation you've been avoiding for years. We have to train the nervous system incrementally. Use these simple phrases as your starter tools in low-stakes situations. Instead of automatically blurting out, "Oh, it's fine," when it definitely isn't, try just saying, "Actually, that doesn't really work for me." And then just notice what happens in your body when you say it. Notice that the absolute catastrophe your nervous system predicted simply doesn't happen. The world doesn't shatter. With these tiny, small acts, your nervous system revises its prediction, finally proving to itself that honesty is safe.
Finally, Section 6, reclaiming your inner voice, the conversation that changes everything. Once you've built up that honesty muscle, you're going to face a profound truth. The conversation you fear is way less dangerous than the silence you are currently living in. You will eventually be ready for that major conversation you've been avoiding. You know the one. It's the one that serves as the dividing line between the life you've just been managing from a distance and the life you are finally going to step fully into. Now, in the middle of that difficult talk, you are going to feel exposed. You'll feel that old, familiar urge to retreat right back to safety, to try and find a diplomatic rephrase. Don't do it. Do not back down. Stay with the accurate truth. That moment of exposure isn't danger. It's the exact turning point where the suppression ends. And when you do that, you're going to experience the incredible power of this number right here. 1. One moment. One first real breath. This is the exact moment when your shoulders drop just a fraction of an inch, your chest expands, and your body finally realizes it's been released from a full-time job it was never, ever supposed to be doing. Your compass resets, you stop being a stranger to yourself, and all that energy you spent on suppression just comes rushing back in.
So I want to leave you with this final thought to chew on today. What will be your first breath? What is the one truth you can stop swallowing today? That first breath is waiting for you, and it's not way out at the end of your courage, it's waiting right at the very beginning of it. Start small, permit yourself to finally know your own reality, and take your life off mute. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I seriously challenge you, start building that muscle of honesty today. You've got this.